Pleasant good morning, honorable members, and those under the sound of my voice. Today in our Moments of Impact devotional segment, I'll be sharing a devotional today entitled, Talk is Cheap, but Money Buy Land. The idiom, talk is cheap, but money buy land, mean that words alone are futile and empty if it's not followed by action. As leaders, it's incumbent upon us to ensure that what we say is congruent with what we do. I believe the true litmus test of great leadership is not marked by what is said, but by what is done. Gone are the days when people will just listen to what we say and not observe what we do. The people we lead in this day and time are more wise, they're more discerning, and they demand action. We've heard this phrase before, action speaks louder than words. This phrase simply means what you do is more important than what you say. So when we say more than what we do, people begin to question our integrity. And when our words lose weight and value and credibility in the eyes of those we lead, our leadership will become compromised. When our leadership is compromised, we lose our ability to lead and influence. And so today, my admonishment to all of us as leaders is to never use words to sound good or to make people feel good. Or in Bahamian vernacular, we must not use words to sell dreams or give false hope. Instead, whatever we say, we must be prepared to back up with action. And if we're not prepared to back it up with action, we shouldn't say it. I believe that as leaders, we should all practice this very simple principle: under promise and over deliver. In conclusion, I'm reminded of a great leadership lesson that Jesus taught us in the book of Matthew chapter 14, verses 15 to 21, where he fed over 5,000 people. Scripture records when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. And as the evening approached, the disciples said, "Send them away. We don't have enough food for them." Jesus replied, "They need not to go away. Give them something to eat." They said, "We only have here 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." They answered, "Bring them to me," he said. And he directed the people to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. And they were all satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 baskets of broken pieces that were left over. The number of those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. In this story, Jesus teaches us that effective leadership is more than talk. Effective leadership is action. I leave you with this final thought today in a quote I found very interesting from an unknown author. And it simply says, "Actions prove who someone is, while words prove who they want to be." Selah. Think and act on these things. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day that you've made, for we will rejoice and we will be glad in it. We praise you for your amazing loving kindness toward us. And we thank you, Lord, because you've been better to us than we've been to ourselves. Father, you said in your word, in all of our ways acknowledge you, and you shall direct our paths. And so today, we come to acknowledge you because we recognize we are nothing without you. And so today, we ask for your continued mercy and forgiveness upon us. We confess today, Lord, that we have sinned and we've all fallen short of your glory. We confess today that we are in need of a Savior. And so, Lord, we humbly ask that you will continue to protect, provide, and prosper the Bahamas. Now, Lord, we pray for our parliamentarians, and we ask, Almighty God, that you would grant each of them strength to carry out their duties. We pray, God, that you would increase their capacity to lead this great nation. We thank you, Lord, for supplying them with wisdom and counsel as they make decisions on behalf of our citizenry. We thank you for our leaders today, and we cover them in and under your blood. Almighty God, bless the proceedings of this house and continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Let us pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Mario Bole, Jomo Campbell, Shannon Cartwright, Jobek Colby Davis, Chester Cooper, Kirk Cornish, Michael Davo, Philip Davis, Adrian Gibson, Pia Glover Roll, Gladys Hanna Bounton, Miles DeRoda, Iram Lewis, Leonardo Lightburn, Zane Lightburn, Leon Lundy, Leroy Major, Basil McIntosh, Frederick Mitchell, Vaughn Miller, Leah Miller-Price, Hubert Minnis, Ginger Moxley, Wayne Monroe, Sylvanus Petty, John Pinder, Michael Pintard, Lisa Raming, Bacchus Roll, Alfred Sayers, Jamal Strawn, Clay Sweeting, Kwesi Thompson, Wade Watson, Adrian White, Kingsley Smith.
Good morning, honorable members. We will now, first of all, before we begin, I'd like to welcome Central Grand Bahama back. I know you are out and God's blessings are upon you, because I see you here alive and well, and we appreciate you being back in this honorable place. We will now go down the order of business as we conduct the people's business. Introduction and swearing of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave. Oh, you have some. Oh, sorry.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Amendment Regulations 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Order the document to lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Price Control General Amendment Number 6 Regulation 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up.
Number 6.
Order the document to lie on the table. For the laying of documents, you may proceed, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Court of Appeal Amendment Act 2023, Appointed Day Notice 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document to lie on the table. For the laying of documents, may proceed, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Coroner's Amendment Act 2023, Appointed Day Notice 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order that the document be brought up. Thank you. Order that the document do lie on the table. For the laying of documents, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Magistrates Amendment Act 2023, Appointed Day Notice 2024.
Thank you, honorable member. Order the document be brought up. Thank you. Order the document do lie on the table. For the laying of documents, you may continue, honorable member.
Madam Speaker, finally, I beg leave to lay on the table of the No, this is the regulation. Oh. Wasn't paying attention. No further laying of
No further laying. Thank you, Honorable Member. Statement and communications by ministers?
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to report delivery of messages numbers 10 to 18 to the Honorable the Senate.
Messages from the Governor General? Messages from the Senate?
Bahamas number 13, message to the Speaker and members of the Honorable House of Assembly from the President and Honorable members of the Senate. The Honorable Senate acquaints the Honorable House of Assembly that they have passed the following bill and desire the consent of this Honorable Chamber, namely, a bill for an act to amend the automatic exchange of financial account information act. The Senate, Nassau, on 20th June 2024, the shall add be president.
Order that the messages still lie on the table. Before we proceed down the order of business, honorable members, I would like to pause and recognize the honorable member for Centerville.
Guy, thank you for the opportunity. Madam Speaker, I would just wish to draw attention today to the gallery. We have with us members from the National Advisory Agriculture Committee, led by Chairman Dr. Godfrey Aeneas, and also accompanying them is Undersecretary Montez Williams and the senior leadership of the committee. I would just like for them to be recognized, Madam Speaker. We are today intending to present the member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador with a report that shows the fruits of their labor since inception. A report, Madam Speaker, which outlines many things that I think will interest Central Grand Bahama and Marco City to the future and development of food security, only as it relates to their various roles, Madam Speaker. So I just want to say thank you. Madam Speaker, if I may also add rather quickly, I also note the presence of Mr. Tyrone Fowler, who has just recently received his instruments of appointments from the Governor General, the new chairman of BAMSI. So we're certainly on the move, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're so welcome, honorable member. Thank you and welcome to the House of Assembly. Now we will revert back to the order of business. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign, seat and new writs, presentations of petitions, presentations of reports of committees, adoption of reports of committees, first reading of bills. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to introduce and have read for the first time a bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act. Madam Speaker, in laying this bill, you would have noted a message from the Senate where this bill has been passed by the Senate. I'm advised by the leader of the government business that the leader of the business of opposition had agreed that this bill, because of its nature and the urgency of having it enacted by the end of this month, and that's why the Senate took the liberty to pass it first, which means that the opposition participated in that exercise, that we'll debate this today as well.
Thank you, honorable member. Is there a seconder?
That's what I understood from
Yes.
the
From the
leader.
no, this from the Senate.
Late.
Order the document be brought up.
Second.
Is there, thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Madam Speaker, the member for Freetown did speak to those of us on this side. No, I understand that. I'm saying he spoke to us this morning. And it was and my first question was, when was it tabled in the House? Because we had the impression when both the member for St. Anne's had spoken to the member for Freetown, was that this was one of those bills that was previously tabled. It was not previously tabled. And so the issue. Yeah, but
It's because of the urgency of the matter. The bill has already been in your domain as your members in the Senate spoke to it.
Member for Cat
Was it? And that's it.
Member for Cat Island.
If you're not on the same page.
We have no difficulties in accommodating the government with these financial bills. As the member for Exuma says, there is no fight when it comes to these financial bills. The only issue we had today was that it ought to have been tabled, and we have no difficulty coming back on Monday, which we said to the member for Freetown. We have no difficulty in coming back. So it cannot be right for us to make to have this sort of back and forward an issue. The issue is it was tabled today. We are prepared to come back and deal with this on Monday. There is no fight. There's no issue with respect to this.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, East Grand Bahama is correct in his setting out of our discussions this morning. We were led on this side to the view that we had because I communicated with Zinans by WhatsApp, and I indicated to him in a message at 6:20 p.m. on Friday that it's our intent to sit Wednesday and Thursday this week. We will debate the DARE bill and Securities Industry bill on Wednesday. We would also like consent to debate the Automatic Exchange of Information bill, which was passed on the nod in the Senate this week, the same day. And I talked about the civil aviation bills for tomorrow, and that there was a change in that. And he asked about when was the digital assets bill tabled, when was the civil aviation bill tabled, nothing else. And then he sent me that same day at 11:07, sorry, this would have been Saturday then, at 11:07 a.m., a draft schedule to be confirmed by the government and compendiums approved by the opposition, DARE/Securities Industry/Auto Exchange, the 26th of June, National Maritime Education Bill, 27th of June, Civil Aviation Bills, 3rd of July, and so on. So the communication from the leader of opposition business was that they consented. I hear what East Grand Bahama says today. There is a time deadline on these, which means they have to be passed before the 30th of June. I forwarded the bill with just slight amendments to the existing act to him. I suggested to him that if he's contributing first, he may care to look at that and agree that we can do it today. If unanimous consent is required, Madam Speaker, and it is not forthcoming, we would intend to allow an hour tomorrow for the debate of this simple enactment in order to meet the deadline of the 30th of June. When one hears about automatic exchange of information, it is quite clear that we are seeking to check a box that other people have asked us to check to keep the business of the financial sector in this country on a firm footing.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the matter has to be dealt with prior to the prior to the 1st of July, we would have no difficulties, as was communicated to me by the leader. We have no difficulties in coming back tomorrow to deal with the bill. As we said, those of us, we understand these financial issues, that they are industry-driven. And so we don't have any difficulties in accommodating the government with respect to it. So we would have no difficulties in coming back tomorrow to deal with the bill if it has to be, if it is being represented that it has to be dealt with before the 1st of July, then we can come back tomorrow and deal with it.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for.
I'm just waiting for, I have another bill today. There's another bill today.
It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a first time. A bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read for first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to amend the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Act.
For the first readings, the chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to have introduced and read for the first time a bill for an act to provide for the membership of the Bahamas as a shareholder country in the Corporación Andina de Fomento and for purposes connected thereto.
Thank you, honourable members. Order that the document be brought up. Okay. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read for a first time. A bill for an act to provide for the membership of the Bahamas as a shareholder country in the Corporación Andina de Fomento and for purposes connected thereto. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. Order that the bill be read for a first time and tabled.
A bill for an act to provide for the membership of the Bahamas as a shareholder country in the Corporación Andina de Fomento and for purposes connected thereto.
For the first reading?
No further first reading.
Thank you, honourable member. Second reading, committal of bills. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Madam Speaker, I've asked the leader of government business on this side to ensure that he communicates with someone in whose word we could appreciate and believe in, right? Because does not reflect well. And that's why I'm happy that he's able to read the exchange between the leader of the opposition business and himself. For them to have just distanced themselves from Sinans. And then they say they're accommodating us, right? So, Madam Speaker,
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Marcus City.
What's the point of
Speaker,
order?
I seek to first of all, the member for Cat Island is seeking to mislead the public, and I remind the public, this business of reading the WhatsApp, the member for St. Anne's have on occasion read the correspondence with the leader of government business to then show a difference of opinion in the House of Assembly on how we were going to proceed on that day than what is agreed privately on the WhatsApp. So for the Prime Minister to seek to give the public the impression that, on occasion there is a difference of opinion or miscommunication is wrong. He has read information clearly showing that certain things that have been communicated privately was not what resulted when we came in the House. So the Prime Minister can certainly carry on, but I wanted the public to know that what he's saying is false.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Continue in your path, man. You're doing a good job. Right? But, Madam Speaker, the point here is that we have the Senate passed the bill in which the members of the opposition was participating in.
Yes.
Right? The leader of the opposition business, in his wisdom, and being very prudent, agreed, well, since that has happened, perhaps we could do it on a nod here today. That's what they agreed to. He agreed to on their behalf. The point I'm making is that they should get their act together. And he, or do not allow him to agree. Do not allow him to agree. Do not allow him to agree if he doesn't have the power to agree. And if you want the leader to speak, if you want to be the leader of opposition business, period, then we should speak to the leader and take his job from him. So, Leader Governor Joseph, you will speak to him? All right.
CC everybody.
Now,
Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member.
Madam Speaker.
Can you please read the long title of the bill, please?
Madam Speaker, we propose to have debated today. This bill is a bill for an act to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets in or from within the Bahamas, and to repeal and replace the Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Act 2020.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
As well, my lady, as a compendium, which is a companion bill, we propose to together have discussed a bill for an act to update and modernize the law relating to the regulation of securities exchanges and securities industry, to expand and enhance the powers of Securities Commission, to repeal the Security Industry Act, Chapter 363, and for connected purposes. Madam Speaker, there are bills number 35 and 36 on the agenda. Madam Speaker, as always, on behalf of the beautiful industrious people of Cat Island, I rise to roll out yet another major legislative update as part of our status quo changing agenda. The Securities Industries Bill 2024 and the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Bill 2024 represent critical steps forward, as well as the strengthening of our regulatory framework for financial services and investments to enhance fairness and transparency and promote sustainable economic growth. These bills, we will maintain the Securities Commission of the Bahamas' position as a world-class regulator, inspiring investor confidence in our financial services sector and our capital markets. As a result of our efforts, Madam Speaker, the Bahamian public will reap the economic benefits of increased investor confidence. The Securities Commission of the Bahamas continues to exemplify excellence as a regulator operating at the highest international standards. Through the work of the Commission, we protect investors and those who use related services from unfair, imprudent, and illegal practices. The Commission oversees regulations to promote fair and efficient capital markets, protect our systems and people from financial crimes, money laundering, fraud and insider trading. Given the scale and scope of our financial services and capital markets ecosystem, and given the limited manpower and resources at hand, the Commission, under the stellar leadership of Executive Director Christina Rolle, should be applauded for its efforts to successfully maintain the Bahamas' leading position and reputational standing in the world. Their small but skilled team monitors our capital markets, ensuring the timely, fair, and accurate disclosure of information, while also serving as a safeguard against systemic abuses. We are charged with reviewing financial and corporate services in the Bahamas, detecting any issue that arise, and taking the appropriate actions to protect the interests of clients and investors. In cases where securities are offered to the public, it is the Securities Commission that regulates and reviews this process to protect investors. When there are issues encountered, it is up to the Commission to take action on those who fail to comply with our laws and regulations on behalf of the public. And of course, where there is a need to reform certain aspects of our legislative and regulatory regime, the Securities Commission of the Bahamas takes the lead on guiding this process. That brings us to these bills before us. Thanks to the diligence of the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, led by Christina Rolle, the Attorney General's Office, and a broad cross-section of local stakeholders, we have two bills before us that will empower the Commission to maintain our regional and world-leading status. Both bills before us have undergone extensive public consultation, during which feedback from our top legal, investment, capital markets, and financial services minds was incorporated to ensure that we would have the most modern, progressive legislative regime that promotes best practices for the industry. Madam Speaker, the Securities Industries Bill 2024 repeals and replaces the Securities Industries Bill Act of 2011. It is a comprehensive overhaul and modernization of the current Act, ensuring that our laws will reflect the present and future needs of the Securities Commission. The elements of the existing Act that are still compliant with international standards and best practices are maintained, while identified areas of improvement are addressed, ensuring alignment with global standards and strengthening the effectiveness of the Commission in pursuing its objectives. The resulting legislation represents the most comprehensive and agile legislative undertaking to empower the Securities Commission to date. Thanks to these changes, we will continue our record compliance with the International Organization of Securities Commission's objectives. We will also retain our largely compliant status with all 40 of the Financial Action Task Force 40 recommendations. Madam Speaker, I usually tout on the world stage how our jurisdiction, in respect to being compliant with the 40 of the Financial Action Task Force recommendations, the Bahamas is one of 6 countries in the world that is compliant. Yeah, that's a topic for another day. The blacklisting. This bill fully establishes the Commission's broad ability to access records and request information and investigations. Within this bill, the governance structure, adding oversight for public issuers, is strengthened, including the requirement to separate the roles of chairman and CEO. A major update introduced by this bill is a new regulatory approach to overseeing the trade of derivatives for every registered firm, counterparty, or other persons participating in the trade of derivatives. This is significant as it establishes the expanded possibilities for derivatives markets as we promote new ways of investing and doing business within our borders. Another major aspect of this bill is the ability of the Commission to recognize digital assets as securities. And that's a major element to this bill. Bringing these digital assets under the Act does just that. Upon being declared a security, a digital asset will fall under the same laws and regulations as other capital market instruments. This change complements the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act, further strengthening the supervisory role of the Commission in relation to digital assets like cryptocurrencies. The Commission's ability to enforce compliance and hold those in breach accountable will also be strengthened. The Commission has expressed authority to issue directives beyond the scope of merely investigating matters, and parties are compelled to comply with these directives. As a part of its expanded administrative authority, the Commission is authorized to refer matters to the Commissioner of Police and the Director of Public Prosecution in situations where criminal charges may be appropriate. There are also now instances in which the Commission has independent authority through administrative action to address non-compliance with regulations by administering automatic fines, issuing orders to cease and desist non-compliant activities, access information to assess suspected non-compliance, and directly address breaches in money laundering and counterterrorism regulations. To further enhance the Commission's ability to bring about fair outcomes for all parties, the legislative updates include penalties related to any authorized parties found to be engaging in tipping off the subject of an investigation about particulars of that investigation, which is an offense that would lead to a fine of up to $50,000 or a prison sentence of up to 3 years or both. Madam Speaker, tipping is when you know something and you speak it, and it could compromise an investigation. And so you don't tip off persons who might be the subject of an investigation, which seems to be the rule these days as opposed to the exception. Hence, the new bill is ensuring that we discourage persons from leaking information about an investigation or tipping off persons who may be under investigations. The Commission is also further empowered, Madam Speaker, to manage systemic risk in capital markets. This includes situations that can bring about distress to investors, issuers, and clients, and situations that erode public confidence in the integrity of capital markets or impair the orderly functioning of the capital markets. Through this, the Commission is authorized to obtain necessary information and issue directives to mitigate these risks and protect the interests of all parties. Here again, Madam Speaker, this is to protect the reputation of the jurisdiction, because not all risk may fall in a category where that might require coercive action, but it may require what we call corrective action for the purpose of maintaining one's reputation. And so the Commission is now empowered to seek information or to follow leads or to, in the capital markets, you'll find that rumors tend to impact institutions. So a rumor might go out, and say, well, the bank is in trouble. And what happens? Everybody runs to the bank to draw their money out, which is called a run. And that could happen in any sort of situation where there are custodians of funds and these entities. And so to stand where rumors are, even though it may not be fact, but they're able to preserve the reputation of institutions by seeking information to clarify rumors and to dispel any erroneous information or misinformation out there in the general public. Among other highlights of the bill is the establishment of the Commission's supervisory capacity for any matters related to the winding up of licensees and registrants, including approvals to begin the wind-up process and the required reporting standards. Compensation can also now be required to protect registrants and clients who will suffer a loss as a result of bankruptcy, insolvency, or winding up procedures. Once implemented and integrated, the Securities Industries Bill will represent a significant step forward in equipping the Securities Commission of the Bahamas for future success. Madam Speaker, the other bill before us today, also falling under the purview of the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, is the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Bill 2024, or better known or better called the DARE Act, D-A-R-E, which is the acronym for Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Bill. It is well known, Madam Speaker, that the Bahamas' digital assets and registered exchanges regime is among the world's best. Once again, this is a testament to the excellence of the legal, regulatory, and financial services minds who have positioned us at the forefront of this rapidly growing sector. In December 2020, the first iteration of this act came into effect, formally recognizing and permitting digital assets and related activities in the Bahamas. The goals of the DARE Act were to protect investors and consumers, to ensure that digital assets activities were in compliance with international standards, AMLF, CFT, and CPF standards, and to manage and mitigate systemic risk inherent to the regulation of digital assets. The legislation was celebrated around the world as an example of comprehensive, protective, flexible, and balanced lawmaking that attracted the interests of many of the largest players within the sector. Today, we host a number of crypto, blockchain, and other digital asset-based enterprises and exchanges that have moved here precisely because of our excellent digital assets regulations, along with our local financial services expertise, and of course, our sun, sand, sea, and culture. Yes. And of course, all of this under the sterling leadership of the executive director there, Christina Rowe, who I hold in high esteem and regard in standing her and being in this place where she is. And I credit her for much of our success in this space. Yes. Of course, Madam Speaker, as the first iteration of a law in the sector, even major jurisdictions like the U.S. have failed to regulate. Adjustments are necessary. We were the first iteration of law to regulate the sector. Even when the major jurisdictions like the U.S., they have failed. They're still grappling to determine whether digital assets are securities or whether they are commodities. So they still fight over that. But we are leading in this area. And no doubt a lot of countries are following us now. Now, as I said, as being the first iteration of the bill, the inevitable bumps will be along the road. Some of these were the product of the inherent volatility and unpredictability of a still growing and evolving and emerging market industry. The digital asset sector of today looks completely different from the sector 3.5 years ago when the DARE Act was first introduced. Where there have been issues and challenges, we have taken note, learnt, and developed solutions to ensure that we continue to lead the way. The bill before us today represents the results of that process to strengthen our framework as we repeal and replace the 2020 Act with new and improved legislation. This bill expands upon the existing Act to include a wider range of digital asset activities. For example, we discussed the trade of derivatives under the Securities Industries Bill, and now under the bill, we make room for digital assets derivative services. This bill also provides regulatory oversight for digital asset advisory and managerial services. To provide for a greater degree of flexibility and agility moving forward, this bill allows for the Commission to identify additional activities as digital assets businesses. This also allows for a regulatory framework to be applied to new applications that have not yet entered mainstream use, or even those that haven't entered yet. The Commission can now quickly account for industry changes and innovations. Among the provisions of the bill is the requirement for comprehensive systems and controls that are appropriate for the scale of business being conducted. There are also regulations for those providing digital wallet services, enabling users to receive, hold, and send digital assets. There will be a comprehensive framework for the providers of digital assets and digital wallet services, which includes expanded protections for those who have digital assets stored in these wallets, including requiring operators to have systems in place to ensure that clients have consistent access to these assets. One of the most innovative aspects of this bill is its first of its kind disclosure requirements for staking, or for the staking of digital assets. Staking is essentially making a fixed investment of your digital assets in a particular blockchain that puts it to work to strengthen cryptocurrency. In exchange, you receive returns on the amount you staked. All of the critical details related to the staking agreement, like the terms, the length of time the assets are staked for, and the interest or rewards earned, must now be verified and disclosed. This adds an additional layer of transparency to these arrangements and ensures that the regulator is aware of the details of the agreements. Additionally, as the use of stable coins increases, we also see a need to regulate the use and exchange of stable coins within our jurisdiction. These coins are essentially cryptocurrencies with a value pegged to another asset, such as a fiat currency or a commodity in reserve. We now have working statutory definition of stable coins and have made way for the formal registration of stable coins, as well as the forms of reserve assets accepted to back up the value of these coins. There is a requirement for the issue of stable coins to provide information related to how the process works, the reserve assets used, investment policies, and other pertinent details, as well as the requirement for an auditor to conduct quarterly reports and annual reviews. These are just a few of the highlights from what will be the new and improved DARE Act as we position the Bahamas to be a leading jurisdiction for the exchange and use of digital assets and financial services in general. Madam Speaker, the two bills we are debating today represent progress on several fronts. We have made changes that will strengthen confidence in our capital markets and promote investments and economic growth. We have enhanced financial services as our second largest industry and strengthened our ability to comply with the highest international transparency standards. We have made our digital assets regime even more robust, with greater protections for investors and clients. And we have embraced the future by embracing change, not only to address our needs for today, but to make room for where we see global financial systems and capital markets headed in the future. These changes are essential to ensuring that we position ourselves for growth. We are global leaders in financial services, precisely because we never rest on our laurels. It was the Bahamas that launched the first central bank digital currency, the sand dollar, in the world. We were the first country to research the economic value of seagrass meadows, and will now soon monetize blue carbon credits by the end of next year as a result of our world-leading research. And we boast a world-leading, updated regulatory regime and legislative framework for investments, capital markets, financial services, and digital assets. It is the innovative streak that will enable us to solve our biggest problems. Madam Speaker, we live in a time when banks are closing branches throughout our archipelago. Thanks to our innovations, we have the framework in place to eventually serve the needs of unbanked populations. In the face of global changes in financial services, thanks to the two bills before us, we will now have modern, efficient, agile systems that are more responsive than ever and will continuously adapt and grow to keep pace with the rapidly changing environment of the 21st century innovation and beyond. We are making progress on all fronts, and we have every intention of keeping the momentum going. Madam Speaker, the securities industry and the digital assets and register exchanges bill have my full and unbridled support as key components in our wider plan to drive investments and growth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Exeter and Ragged Island.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Speaker. I stand to second the bills so articulately described by our Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance. And I do so proudly on behalf of the magnificent people of Exumas and Ragged Island, who sent me here for the second time consecutively to do the people's work, to apply whatever skills I bring from the private sector to the work of the government, to enhance industry, to create opportunities, to influence positively investor confidence, to maintain our reputation in the world as a progressive little country with a robust economy and with a thriving financial services industry. And on this backdrop, I commend Prime Minister Davis for the sweeping vision and his leadership in these matters. His commitment to the securities industry, to the digital assets industry, and the financial services industry generally. He's aptly pointed out that whilst we continue to make very steady progress, whilst we have innovated, whilst we have been amongst the most compliant, best regulated financial services industry anywhere on the planet. There have been bumps in the road, but yet we persevered. We have been on the siege, but yet we stand resilient. There have been forces in the world that would like to see us out of these businesses and this industry, but yet we punch above our weight class because we are Bahamians. And that's how we roll, Madam Speaker.
That's how we roll.
We have seen diplomacy in this space. We have seen innovation in this space. And we have had occasion to candidly call them out, Madam Speaker, on the world stage and at home. And we continue to do so. You know, I've had the distinct pleasure of growing in the financial service industry, having spent 15 years in the offshore international financial services business, having had the opportunity to do so in 3 countries, Madam Speaker. And I have seen consistent pivots in this business over the course of time. And I have been involved in 1999 or thereabouts in managing the process of Y2K. I know many of us who are old enough remember that. And there was a pervasive view. There was a pervasive view that that was going to be the end of times. We persevered because we're resilient. And then that was that ill-fated package of financial laws brought in by the Ingram F&M administration that changed the landscape demonstrably as to how we work, and it created severe challenges for regulators and industry participants. And there was a prevailing view that Ingram had killed the industry. I was a part of it. But yet we persevered. And we pivoted. And over the course of time, we have seen the development of some of the best professionals in financial services that we have seen anywhere in the world, Madam Speaker, who may have started as lawyers or accountants or economists, who participate in this industry, who bring their grit, their strength, their resilience as Bahamian professionals, who commanded and demanded the respect of their peers anywhere around the world, Madam Speaker, but who understood very clearly that we were fighting a tide where we had an industry that created a middle class that paid handsome salaries, that allowed the participants in this business to create a better life for their children, to cause them to aspire to not just be employees in these financial institutions, but to one day own them, Madam Speaker. And if you watch, certainly, the landscape of many segments of this industry, that is what we've seen. And we have Bahamian-owned entities playing in the international financial services sector, like the Private Trust Corporation. Star Bahamians, pivoting as they go, standing shoulder to shoulder with the largest banks in the world, and doing incredibly well, carrying the flag of our country and telling the world we are Bahamians. We are small, but we are mighty. We can play in the space, we can do very well, and we can do it in a manner that's compliant with the rules that we did not create, Madam Speaker. So what we see here today is a step to further advance this industry, to further advance investor confidence, to further protect investors and consumers, and to further carve out our space in this industry and in the world. That's what we see here. And a lot of work has gone into these bills. I read them all cover to cover, collectively about 500 pages, Madam Speaker. This is tedious work, and therefore I commend the drafters. I commend the industry stakeholders. I commend the regulators, the Office of the Attorney General, the ministry responsible for economic affairs. This is tedious work, but it's important work. We created an opportunity to change, Madam Speaker, to not just protect the industries that we have, but to innovate and to grow new industries. And you saw, Madam Speaker, the implementation, the passing of the DARE Act in 2020. And what we see today is an enhancement, an updating, if you will, an opportunity to learn from the bumps that we experienced, to use best practice, to use the learnings from the research all across the world of participants in this business, and to be the first to lead the way, as it was pointed out by our Prime Minister, to be the first anywhere in the world to properly regulate this business. So that's where we stand in the world, Madam Speaker. And it is with that backdrop that I express some regret today. You see, having served for 4 years as the opposition spokesman for financial services, we've always deployed a bipartisan approach to financial services. And we have always said that when the world attacks one of us, they attack all of us. And we always said that politics ends at the border on these issues. And we stood together. We stood tall together. In a very bipartisan way, we facilitated many updating of many pieces of legislation without notice, frequently, because we understood the mission, Madam Speaker. We understood that what we're doing in financial services is bigger than PLP, F&M politics. We understood that we're carving our place in the world in an industry where they don't want us playing, Madam Speaker. And we committed together to stand together, to fight together in the best interest of the Bahamian people. That's what we did. That's what we did when we stood, all 4 of us, in opposition, Madam Speaker. We stood with the government. And we had some very harsh things to say, along with the government, some things they could not say. To those international bodies and entities who, in our view, sought to discredit the work that we have done in this country for decades, we stood together. And that's why I'm disappointed with this opposition, that we are seeing delays after we have expressly indicated that this is a matter of tight deadlines and of great expediency. So I just want to leave that on the record, Madam Speaker. But let me reiterate the significant points made by the Honorable Prime Minister, that we acknowledge that over the past 2 decades, our financial services industry has undergone significant changes, often to the detriment of the Bahamian people, to the detriment of the workforce. We've seen displacement of high-paid professionals as a result of the various transitions that we've seen in this industry. But with these bills, we are pivoting to address the demands of a new era. We are creating opportunities for displaced financial services professionals. That's the kind of compassionate work we do, Madam Speaker. So this just isn't about regulations. This isn't just about updating the laws and the books. It isn't just about being innovative and modern and putting in place changes for the sake of doing so. It's about the Bahamian people. That's the kind of work we do, Madam Speaker. And I sat and listened intently to the Honorable Minister of Finance, our beloved Prime Minister, who laid out eloquently in great detail the many enhancements that we see to the existing acts that we now repeal and replace. And therefore, I am determined not to repeat what he has said. But I simply want to stand strongly behind the work already done, support the industry. And I point out, as Eastern Bahama rightly said earlier, these bills, for the most part, are done by industry. They're vetted by regulators. We consult with the stakeholders in the industry, people who have an interest, Bahamians who want to consistently see the best for the industry, who understand the landscape internationally, and who want to continue to enhance investor confidence. Yes. Who want to protect investors, who want to protect consumers all around the world, and who want to ensure ultimately that the integrity of our country, the reputation of our country, is not attacked unfairly by those who want to see us not be in this business and ultimately fold our tent and go home. We're in this business to stay. because we have been a part of creating many of the pieces of legislation in this business that's been copied by others around the world, in the region and elsewhere. That's the kind of work we do, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I wholeheartedly support these bills. I support them because I stand with the financial services industry. We support them because we stand wholeheartedly and we applaud the great work being done by the Securities Commission of the Bahamas. We stand because we recognize that in this business, we have some of the most competent professionals anywhere on planet Earth.
That's right.
That's why we back these bills, Madam Speaker. That's why we stand with industry in the financial services. That's why we seek to advance the work started with the DARE Act in 2020. That's why we implement a new and improved securities industry bill. Because that's the kind of work we do, Madam Speaker. And it is with regret that we're not going to complete the automatic exchange of financial information amendment bill today, because it simply introduces several significant changes to the original 2016 Act to ensure compliance with international standards and enhance the framework for financial reporting. It's hard to see any of us as responsible, honorable legislators seeking to delay the inevitable, Madam Speaker. But it is what it is. We are where we are. We have an obligation to the Bahamian people to continue to innovate, to continue to grow, to continue to create opportunities, and that is what we do. We will stay focused. We will drive change. Yes. We will pivot when we need to. We will stand our ground in the world. But ultimately, Madam Speaker, we will create opportunities for high-paying jobs, yes, for possibility to own this industry even more than we do now, yes, to own the entities that play in this space on the international side and the domestic side. That's who we are. We are Bahamians, yes, Madam Speaker. Yes. So I wholeheartedly support these bills, and I proudly second them, Madam Speaker, on behalf of the people of Exodus and Reg Island. May God bless the financial services industry. May God continue to grow the digital assets business, and may God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to regulate the issuance, sale, and trade of digital assets in or within the Bahamas, to repeal and release the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Act 2020. As many? The chair recognizes the honourable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just waiting on the, okay, waiting on the clock, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's a privilege once again to stand in this honorable place to speak on behalf of the good and the special people of East Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, I want to first of all assure the member for Exuma and Ragged Island and to assure the members on the government side that when it comes to the financial services industry, as the former Minister of State for Finance, I also had dealings with those partners in that industry. And be assured that those of us on this side also stand with those members of the financial services industry. It is a special group of persons, highly skilled, highly intelligent, and not just in terms of the Bahamas, but they are leaders in the world in that industry and have been for years across different administrations. And so nothing has changed with respect to those of us on our side in supporting those persons who are in the financial services industry. And it is correct, as the member for Exuma said, that oftentimes it is the world against the Bahamas in terms of how they are in that industry. And so all of us need to be supportive. All of us must be supportive with respect to each of these industries. We were the ones, Madam Speaker, who passed the DARE Act in 2020, recognizing the importance of that industry, recognizing that the Bahamas had a unique ability to be a world leader in that industry. And so we 100% support that industry. And it was also in 2011, again under the Free National Movement, that the security industry's previous act was passed. So we on this side, Ashma. Thank you. We on this side, we also support those members of the financial services industry. We want to make that point absolutely clear. And with respect to the other bill that was laid today, we were originally coming back tomorrow, and we will deal with that. We have no difficulties in accommodating the government so that we can deal with that bill tomorrow. Madam Speaker, it is a privilege to make a contribution on these important bills: the Securities Industry Bill, the 2024, and Digital Assets and Registered Exchange Bill, 2024. Both of these bills are, as was stated, they're not new bills, but they are updated versions of the previous bills. The Securities Industries Bill, or Securities Industries Act, was originally passed in 2011 by the FNM, and the Non-Digital Assets Registered Exchange Act was passed again by the FNM in 2020. The Securities Industry Bill is, in a lot of respects, a repeat of the 2011 bill, but they have made significant changes. They have updated and expanded their jurisdiction with respect to this year's bill. Both are very specialized and what I call industry-driven. They are industry-driven bills. And when it comes to industry-driven bills, Madam Speaker, in these things, you do better to listen and let the experts deal with and make those recommendations as to what should happen. And so in this respect, when it comes to the DARE bill and when it comes to the Securities Industry bill, we have no difficulties supporting what the industry has recommended. Ms. Christina Rule, the Securities Commission Executive Director. Again, we agree with the comments that were made by the member for Cat Island. She is, again, I've worked with her over the years, and she is a very smart, articulate, gifted, talented Bahamian who is making her mark not just in the Bahamas, but also making her mark in this industry throughout the world. So we also support her and her efforts in the Securities Commission. She's quoted, Madam Speaker, as saying that the regulator decided to modernize the Securities Industry Act in 2022 after evaluating stakeholder feedback. It has enlisted Canadian drafters who contributed to the 2011 bill for this task. She also said, Madam Speaker, and I quote, in setting out the overhaul to the legislation, we recognized that the regulatory framework was in need of updating in a number of areas, and just in terms of the evolution of the industry practices and standards since 2011. So we support those things. We support her when she says also that some of the key areas addressed in the legislative overhaul include clarification of investment powers, provisions which recognize the need for management of systematic risk, automatic penalty framework, long outstanding clarification between securities and investment fund regimes, derivatives and derivatives framework, classification, digital assets, and tipping off provisions. The Commission's powers are also administrative actions and its ability to freeze assets. Again, this is a new provision that is included in this bill, which again, we support the recommendations that were made by the Securities Commission. Madam Speaker, the bill speaks to regulating Bahamians and non-Bahamians to do business within the jurisdiction of the Bahamas. But what about Bahamians doing business outside of the Bahamas? So, for example, the Minister of Housing raised questions on the sale of shares by the National Insurance Board. He made a huge deal when it came to selling of these shares. But what he didn't say was, and what I believe was intentionally left out, was that this was a part of the central bank's plan to conserve the country's reserves. We had little foreign and U.S. currency coming into the country during the height of the pandemic in 2020. The country was shut down, and the central bank's responsibility, it was the central bank's responsibility to ensure that we maintain the value of our currency and the one-to-one peg to the U.S. dollar. The Bahamian dollar is backed by U.S. reserves, and we need sufficient to trade. Those reserves are being diminished every day, and they need to be replenished through tourism and investment when it comes to U.S. dollars coming into the country. The governor of the central bank gave 4 directives at that time in early 2020, one of which was to NIB to sell its foreign shares. There was a fear that the reserves could fall too low. If they fell too low, this would be disastrous for the country. We needed to meet our import bill, and we needed to ensure the one-to-one peg was maintained. Madam Speaker, I want to quote what the governor for the central bank said. I want to quote what the governor for central bank said. And he said this in a press statement during early 2020. And I quote him. Fourth, so this was number 4 in the number of their directives as to how to protect the reserves. Fourth, in keeping with the principle of viewing the National Insurance Board's foreign investments as an extended support for the foreign reserves. And just to stick a pin there, so in his view, in the central bank's view, they saw all of those foreign shares that were held by NIB as supporting our foreign reserves. They were just not in U.S. currency, but they were in U.S. shares. The central bank, and I go back to the quote, the central bank has requested that NIB to liquidate some of its external investments and bring the proceeds back on shore. So, Madam Speaker, what the governor of the bank said at that time was that all of those foreign shares that you are holding, that NIB is holding, we want you to bring those funds back home to bolster the foreign reserves. That was what the governor for central bank said in his press statement.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Freetown.
And Bahama read it correctly. Some is not the same as all. What he read was a directive to liquidate some. He has represented that that's a directive to liquidate all. If what he has read is correct, some is not a directive to liquidate all.
Thank you, honourable member.
Madam Speaker, I take his point, but fine. I stand by what and I quoted what the governor for central bank said. So, Madam Speaker, I would trust the governor of the central bank when it comes to economic matters and when it comes to, particularly when it comes to protecting our country's reserves. I would trust the governor of the central bank's position every day and twice on Sundays over what I would call the second guessing, Monday quarterbacking of the Minister for Housing. On to the DARE bill, Madam Speaker. As was said by the member for Cat Island, and I agree with him, that the DARE Act was called, and this is actually a quote from the Prime Minister, the DARE Act was called, the Digital Assets and Register Exchange Act is a testament to the visionary leadership and expertise that exists within our country. The Bahamas is now recognized internationally as having one of the strongest digital assets legislative frameworks in the world. And we agree with that. We were the ones that passed it, so we agree 100% with that statement. This bill is again what I would call an industry-driven bill. And those changes are industry-driven changes. So we support any amendment that the industry believes would strengthen their operating. Some of these changes, I believe, was as a result of the lessons learned from the FTX collapse. I support the conflict of interest provisions, which, as I understand, are new and are necessary. The bill also calls for the clear segregation of assets. So client assets must be segregated from the licensee's operational funds. This is something that we support, something that we believe was a lesson learned. The bill expands activities, so it adds, and it also adds a stable coin regime, provisions for staking, which again is a particular item that the Securities Commission is very, very concerned about, which I'm informed is the first in the world in regulating this type of activity. So again, we are world leaders when it comes to managing and regulating with respect to this industry. It also provides for the regulating of digital exchanges, which is again something that the original DARE bill dealt with, but this DARE bill also provides that there are a number of rules that they anticipate bringing on to stream, which will again add some regulation to the digital exchanges, because you have the digital being able to deal with the digital assets, but you also have the provision of having the assets being traded on a digital exchange. So again, we support that. We also see where there is whistleblower protection, which again is a new provision. Again, we support it. It is something that industry believes will assist, so we support that as well. And also, freezing of assets. Again, it is a tool that can be used when it comes to enforcement. Again, it is an industry-driven provision, so we support that as well. All needed to support and to grow the industry. Madam Speaker, I repeat, those of us on this side will support legislation that is recommended by the industry and that will assist in modernizing and keeping this industry moving forward. Madam Speaker, the DARE Act was passed in 2020, one of those pieces of legislation that was a part of the fiscal strategy report. So what was put inside, I believe it was the 2020-2019 fiscal strategy report, was putting the DARE Act in there was part of the government's fiscal strategy to get involved into that industry. It was a conscious decision accepted by the government in 2020 to move forward into that industry, and it would open up the additional economy. It would open up, again, the digital economy. It would open up to additional jobs. So we 100% believe in that. We also believe, though, that both of these bills have significant international financial implications. And so by us updating, by us making sure that we remain relevant, we remain flexible, speaks to the international community, and it speaks well to the international community when it comes to the financial services industry and when it comes to having positive financial implications. But, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Housing said in his budget debate, which we believe, like this bill, has international financial implications. And I want to again state that we must, at all costs, protect our international reputation. And the F&M had, again, had an additional spending components. This is what the member for Carmichael said in his budget debate, that the F&M had an additional government spending commitments above 2017, 2018 was over $2 billion. And I believe his reference was where the money gone, or that he was in the Ministry of Finance and he could not find where this $2 billion went, or how the $2 billion was spent. Madam Speaker, this is simply a falsehood. The last full fiscal year for the F&M administration was 2020-2021. After coming to office in September of 2021, the PLP administration quickly redid their own budget for 2021-2022. with their own spending and revenue decisions. So they did an assessment, and they determined that they needed to make their adjustments to they had to make their adjustments when it came to spending and when it came to revenue. The incremental spending in total between 2017 and 2018 and 2020 and 2021 is some 1.4 billion, adding the increases for the 3 fiscal periods. But what is sad is that the minister neglected to point out that, and what we all know to be true, is that over that same period, those same 3 years, the country encountered its worst 2 economic catastrophes back to back. First, Hurricane Dorian, and then COVID-19. These caused the F&M government to come to Parliament. So when we saw these 2 catastrophes, we came to Parliament with supplemental budgets, with major ramp up in capital and recurrent spending to address the immediacy of these issues. And let us not forget, to their credit, the then opposition PLP unanimously supported the necessary ramp up in spending and relaxation in tax measures to address this. In fact, no less than the current Deputy Prime Minister, the member for Exuma and Ragged Island,
Yes, sir.
suggested that the government at that time should borrow and spend $2 billion instead of the $1.3 billion in additional debt that Parliament, including the PLP, had agreed to. So we, to their credit, they supported the ramp up in spending. Also, again, Madam Speaker, the minister also failed to point out that what caused an increase in spending, but it also caused a loss in revenue. So while we had to ramp up the spending, we also lost revenue. So, and it was significant loss in revenue. So from 2020 to 2021, revenue was only $1.9 billion. This is almost $1 billion less than what the government normally would take in. Additionally, I would add that the Minister of Housing was playing politics and sending a potentially damning message to the international marketplace. Something that both of these bills that we are debating here today, which we support. His statements in NIB, which demonstrates, in my view, an ignorance of how things work, and now his call on the numbers which have been accounted and settled. Information around the budget is fundamental, Madam Speaker. You know, that's why I wanted to show this Office of the Auditor General. Not only do we pass a budget in this place, but after all of the monies have been spent, the Auditor General gives a report on the spending. And it's all documented in here. Madam Speaker, information around the budget is fundamental, and those who lead us must demonstrate the capability rather than blatant ignorance. We should desist, and the member for Carmichael should desist, lest he cause the Bahamas bonds to decline even more. What? A slide which started right after the budget communication. What? Madam Speaker, the minister is suggesting, dangerously suggesting, that the information communicated to rating agencies and the IMF is wrong. Because again, all of this information in terms of spending would have been passed on by the Ministry of Finance to rating agencies and the IMF. He is saying that's wrong.
Madam Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma.
Whilst what the member for East Grand Bahama is saying is interesting, I want to caution him not to put words in the mouth of the member for Carmichael. At no time did he make reference to anybody sending erroneous information anywhere, inclusive to rating agencies and the IMF. So whilst the member for East Grand Bahama is seeking to defend the credibility of the Bahamas, I invite him not to inflict the damage that he is claiming he is trying to prevent. He knows better, Madam Speaker. And when you know better, you do better, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member. East Grand Bahama, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, also,
The use of the process.
the member for Carmichael also appears to be raising questions of the competency of the staff of the Ministry of Finance. Because if he said he went to the Ministry of Finance,
Yes.
he didn't say this was an assessment that he did. He said he went to the Ministry of Finance. And his question was, where did the money go?
Exactly.
So, Madam Speaker, it appears as though he is raising questions of the competency of the staff of the Ministry of Finance.
Yes. Yes.
It also, Madam Speaker,
Yes.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
The member for East Grand Bahama is normally more responsible, Madam Speaker. And I caution him once more not to be misleading. And I want him to be careful the company he's keeping, Madam Speaker.
Being infected, man.
The member for Carmichael did indicate, on my recollection, that he sought information from the Ministry of Finance. At no time, as I recall, he sought to denigrate the professionalism, the integrity, or the work of persons who work at the Ministry of Finance. Again, the member for East Grand Bahama knows better. I ask him to do better, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honourable member.
I am confident that the staff of the Ministry of Finance,
Yeah.
they know where every dollar went.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
They know where every dollar went.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Madam Speaker, also, and I'll rush to complete this, also,
Tourism do the same.
the member for Carmichael also is disputing the conclusions drawn by the Ministry of Finance, and also with respect to the conclusions drawn by the member for Cat Island as Prime Minister and Minister of Finance,
Yes. Yes.
when they said they were coming to office, and when they came to office, and that they did an accounting, and their accounting, they made no adjustment to the deficit at that time. So, Madam Speaker, if you make no adjustment to the deficit at that time, then you know what is being spent, and you know what is coming in, and you have no difficulties with what is being spent and what is coming in, so you make no changes to the deficit at that time, Madam Speaker.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, he is effectively putting the country in a spot where its credit worthiness could come under further pressure because of questionable practices at the Ministry of Finance. He is wrong on all fronts, Madam Speaker. He is wrong on all fronts and should rethink this approach.
Yes.
What is more critical is that in 2017, 2018, that in the 2023-2024 budget, it projected an outturn of 109 million surplus. That's what they projected, that they would have a surplus in 2023, 2024. But their 2024, 2025 budget now puts us as a 69 million deficit. Consider the turnaround and how the market is likely to believe whatever we say. Consider that the market has adjusted and is adjusting to that outcome. Then consider how these statements are making the situation worse. For the love of our country, Madam Speaker, this must stop. Madam Speaker, as I take my seat, and I had a whole lot to say in terms of what was spent during that time and being able to justify what was spent during that time. Madam Speaker, the minister, I end with this, Madam Speaker, the minister never answered. He never answered the many questions about his own actions while at the Ministry of Immigration. He stated that he went to finance to do research. But, Madam Speaker, I would suggest that he take the same amount of effort and the same amount of time to go to immigration and to seek the answers to all of those questions that were left and tabled by those of us on this side.
60. My God. Stay on your feet. Stay on your feet.
So, Madam Speaker, there was also a opinion, not an opinion, but an editorial by the Nassau Guardian. The Nassau Guardian said Keith Bell's pathetic theatrics.
What?
And I will table it. I don't have no difficulty in table it. I will no difficulty in doing that whatsoever. I have no difficulty in that, Madam Speaker. But
Read it.
you know, Madam Speaker,
Read it.
they said in their editorial, almost a year to date, when he and I'm quoting from their editorial. He said almost a year to date, when he embarrassed himself during the 2023-2024 budget debate in Parliament with his shockingly shallow condemnation of the deal the government of the Bahamas struck with Global Ports for the development of the Nassau cruise port. Minister Keith Bell, was back at it with another pathetic performance, condemning the Minister administration over the sale of the National Insurance Board's foreign stock in 2020, claiming it was a loss to the fund and that it put NIB at less than favorable position to meet its obligations. Madam Speaker, I see my time is gone, so I will just end with what they concluded. It is clear that the minister is more concerned with political theatrics and smear than keeping the Bahamian people honestly and fully informed on the decisions taken by their government on their behalf. Once again, Bell has proven to be the clown of the budget debate. And I quote that.
Table it. Table it.
So, Madam Speaker,
Thank you, honorable member.
those of us on this side, we 100% support these bills. They are industry-driven bills. And so if these bills were proposed and they will do good for the country, then we 100% put our support behind doing what is best for the country. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Executive Ragged Island.
I want to invite the member for East Grand Bahama, who read from a document, accepted it as his own words, to now lay it on the table, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Order the document be brought up?
You reach it. Why they show you?
Speakers in charge. I've been in the bus, I've been on top of the bus, I go under the bus. Plenty mechanics, plenty working men get out of the bus. I'm a working man.
Order the document be brought up? Order the document to lie on the table.
I didn't bring my.
As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
I didn't bring my.
Thank you.
So you're all next.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank you for welcoming me back to Parliament. I want to say to all the humans under the sound of my voice today, good day. It is indeed a blessing, Madam Speaker and colleagues, to be here. And I'd like to borrow a phrase from a former colleague, a former member of the Pine Ridge. It is indeed a blessing to be able to stand on the vertical and not in the horizontal.
Yes, yes.
I would say that it is indeed a blessing to be here among the living, Madam Speaker, and for all of those things I give God I'm only here today, Madam Speaker, because of the grace and mercy of the Almighty God. And I would like to say that it's your grace and mercy that brought me through.
Yes, yes.
I'm living this moment, Lord, because of you.
Yes.
I want to thank you and praise you too. Your grace and your mercy, Lord, has brought me through. Had it not been for the grace and mercy of the Almighty God, I suspect that today you would have been here bringing tributes to the former member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama.
Who?
You second. Madam Speaker, I suspect that you and colleagues would have been here today giving tributes to the former member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama. And I can imagine on Friday, a lot of good things would have been said about me at the cathedral. As God spared me, and I'm here today, I would encourage all of you, while I'm alive and I can hear it, tell me all the good things about me now, while I can appreciate it. And I do want to thank my colleagues from both sides. I do appreciate you. Thank you for the phone calls. Thank you for the texts. Thank you for the expressions of love. And this morning, thank you for the warm embrace. I do really appreciate all of you. Madam Speaker, before I make my contribution to the Securities Industry Bill and the DARE Bill, I just want to really share my story about how life can change in a matter of minutes. And this is sobering for all of us. Madam Speaker, as I wrote, leaving the beach, and I want to give condolences to the Russell family, with the family searching for the young man that went missing from the jet ski. I went to get dressed for a funeral in 8 Mile Rock. A good supporter, Ms. Beryl Stewart. Unfortunately, I was not speeding. I was taking my time, driving. And out of the blue, like a Hollywood movie, you could imagine an obstacle like a lamp pole appeared in the road, in your path, while driving. And I had a split second to make a decision: challenge the oncoming traffic or challenge the lamp pole. As God would have it, I challenged the lamp pole, and I was not driving in my small Dodge car. I was in an SUV at the time. As God would put it, I intended to drive the car, but the car computer went down. Only God. And going airborne, striking my head, and the car being entangled in the high-tension cable, and I can hear the sound of the electricity cracking. But through the grace of God, the insulation protected me. And jumping out of the car onto the tension line, not thinking, but again, through His grace and mercy, the energized side of the line broke away because of the force from the car. So when I stepped on it, it was pretty much de-energized. I would have been fried meat had it been the other way. But like I can say, that was one time I can testify the song Jesus Take the Wheel, because the control of the car was out of my being. Came to a stop right in front of a second lamp pole. And I can say, what was so frightening to me, Madam Speaker, was that this is indeed the same month that my son was tragically killed in a traffic accident. The angel of death came knocking, but mercy said no. I have work for you to do. You have to come back to Parliament today, and you have to be here for the people moving forward. Madam Speaker, I want to say to the general public, you can never be too careful. I urge you to always exercise extreme caution and care. When you're leaving home, speak well to your loved ones. Show them that you love them. Spend as much time as you can with them, because you never know when it will be your last time. So, Madam Speaker, I'm sorry I got a little emotional. When I think of the goodness of God, what He's done for me, I have to testify to the world. Madam Speaker, I want to thank the great President of Central Grand Bahama for their continued support and faith in me. It is never lost on me when I enter these sacred halls that it is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here. I am forever grateful to represent them in these chambers. They are hardworking Bahamian citizens who are simply seeking to make their dreams come true. All they are asking for, Madam Speaker and colleagues, is an opportunity. I am optimistic by the focus on Grand Bahama, as was recently discussed in the budget. Madam Speaker, I had a very lengthy conversation, and I will get to the bill, with a resident of Grand Bahama who always speaks soberly and soberly about Grand Bahama's past, but so passionately about Grand Bahama's possible future. Madam Speaker, during this conversation, there were a few things that he said that stood out to me, and I feel responsible to repeat those words in this House today. He led off by saying that out of every island in the Bahamas, Grand Bahama has always been the most unique, in his opinion. And while he admitted that every island offers something, there's just an extra uniqueness that Grand Bahama has, from the history, the people, the landscape, and the treasure troves of beauty we know it to have. Madam Speaker, he went on to further say, straightforward, that what Grand Bahama once was, it can never be again. I want to repeat that. Grand Bahama will never be able to go back to what it once was. However, Madam Speaker, he was enthusiastic that Grand Bahama has the potential to be so much more than its best past days. If we envision a new Grand Bahama, it can be a place for growth and prosperity for Bahamians. We know the potential of hospitality that our island offers. It's the type that made other countries pay close attention to us, like they're doing in the financial sector. Madam Speaker, we have the ability to attract visitors to our shores from anywhere in the world. Madam Speaker, the Grand Bahama also told me that he believes the powers that be, that's us, must understand that progress means forward or onward. But unlike what we preach in our national symbols, we seem to go backwards, or stay stagnant so often. Lastly, he said, we will never be what we can be if those in authority cannot put their differences aside and find a way to work together for the betterment of the people that they serve. That example, he said, must start in Parliament. Madam Speaker, we spoke for much longer, but from that conversation, I took a few important things. Grand Bahamians are watching and taking notes, and they are crying out for real, tangible change. Most importantly, I want to acknowledge that we are the ones tasked with the responsibility of making this happen regardless of which side of the floor we sit on. Madam Speaker, things are tough. I was called last night by the leader referencing a constituent that recently had a stroke. And he called the name. I said, I remember, because I was able to assist her in getting a wheelchair recently. But having experienced a stroke, she's at home, no food, and the power is off. So we had to make a move last night to ensure that power was restored. And I thank those at the Grand Bahama Power Company for stepping in at the last minute. So Ms. Lead and your team, Kendall, and the rest of those who assisted, I want to thank you for helping bring some relief to Mrs. Ballou last night. Madam Speaker, I want to say that I applaud the New Day government's intention for Grand Bahama. And I want to speak to the International Bazaar. I'll touch on that briefly, and the Princess Towers Hotel. Madam Speaker, we want to see the projected growth in tourism and economic activities over the next few years. I agree that we must preserve this significant landmark, and any action to course-correct the abandonment of these areas can stimulate tourism, create jobs, and generate business activity. Madam Speaker, Grand Bahamians await to see the details of these arrangements and how all of this will play out. We applaud any effort to create a new future for Grand Bahama, and have spoken ad nauseum about the need to revitalize this part of the island. But Madam Speaker, I just find it funny how this New Day government administration continues to flip-flop on the things that they've criticized us on, but are now benefiting from, and even in most cases using it as a springboard for their own success. Let me clarify. Clearly, the FNM government was on to something, Madam Speaker, when he made the decision to purchase the Grand Lucayan Hotel and Airport. Instead, at the time, the then government was berated and criticized for trying to save jobs and inject some life back into the island. We purchased a ready-for-occupancy hotel that was able to keep thousands of Bahamians employed and able to provide for their families. You can take the good, but you can't take the bad. We further ensured that employees that wanted to leave would be compensated fairly. The FNM administration also had a plan to sell the hotel, Madam Speaker, but unfortunately, the time was cut short. 3 years later, and this administration has yet to deliver on its promise to lock down a buyer. In fact, it continues to budget millions of dollars for Grand Lucayan Hotel with no sale in sight. Madam Speaker, they are doing the same thing that they bash us for. But they are buying, Madam Speaker, an abandoned piece of property that will require substantial investment and development. Though I will not argue that this could indeed greatly benefit the island, so there's some plus. I couldn't help but call out what Bahamians call talking with two mouths. And as our chaplain said this morning, people hear what you say, but they watch what you do. Action speaks louder than words. Madam Speaker, all we are saying is give us our credit for setting the foundation for this opportunity for Grand Bahama. We bought the resort and the hotel, and now the Bahamian people have more in our inventory, and we have more leverage to create the product that Grand Bahama deserves. Madam Speaker, it's a very Shakespearean moment, but as Shakespeare said, we think thou dost protest too much. The government now has an extensive treasure trove of assets that can strategically bring Grand Bahama to life. We are here to work with you.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Pine Ridge.
Matter of clarification. The opposition, he's speaking about the acquisition of the Grand Lucayan. The Grand Lucayan was acquired for more than the appraised value. And it was acquired in order to save jobs. Those same individuals were terminated And so in terms of, anyway, I just want to clarify that. On the matter of the International Bazaar, that's a totally different situation. We are actually turning this into an Afro-Caribbean marketplace and creating a trade hub between Africa and the Caribbean. And so they're totally two different, they acquired the Grand Lucayan property from Hutchison and allowed them to keep the insurance money. They did not re-inject into the property so that all arms of the property could be reopened. And so it's a totally different matter, and I just want to clarify that. It's not, it's apple and oranges, really.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, when we purchased the Lucayan Hotel, it was to save the entire Lucayan Strip. There's an attachment called Port Lucayan Marketplace that was in need of support. And the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, the tour operators, those who were terminated or who choose to leave, it was because we had a sale already in place to sell the hotel. That was terminated. That wasn't followed through. But I would not belabor that point. I said that there's some plus to it. We purchased the hotel. There's now more in our inventory. There's now more to bargain for. The people have more leverage now when it comes to rebuilding Grand Bahama. And whatever happens in terms of rebuilding Grand Bahama, we are in support of, and we will support. Madam Speaker, I dare say that I challenge the government. You're taking a step, but let's not be myopic. Let's not be short-sighted. Let's make a bold step. Instead of only purchasing the bazaar and the princess, let's purchase the entire Hutchinson property, the whole entire 420 acres of Harcourt property, and make this a part of Grand Bahama future. If the intention for Grand Bahama is still to promote it as a tourist destination, let's develop it as a tourist offering. You have from the Port Authority all the way to the end of Hutchinson, you have 3 golf courses. You have the Emerald and the Ruby. The Diamond was never developed. It's in South Bohemia. We can now develop that in the park. So let's run with it. If you're going to do it, if you're going to go, let's go big or go home. Madam Speaker, when we talk about the International Bazaar and the former Royal Oasis or the Grand Bahama Casino and Resort, we are reminded of a vibrant ecosystem that was the lifeblood of Grand Bahama. There was no beach, all-inclusive, just gambling, golf, food, fun, shopping, entertainment, relaxation, all wrapped up in an amazing Bahamian hospitality. This was indeed the heartbeat of Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, Grand Bahama doesn't need another owner or management that is able to hold the island hostage. This could challenge the entire dynamics for the island. So again, to the government, we are here to support you. Let us be bold. Let us be bold. Madam Speaker, Grand Bahama has a different appeal, and we must find a way to attract investment partners to bring a grand vision for Grand Bahama to life. And yes, I am Grand Bahama centric today. I live there, and I know the suffering of our people, and I applaud this government for taking a step. But let's go bold, and let's do it together for the betterment of our people. Madam Speaker, as I move on, I would say that the gentleman that I mentioned earlier said something to me, Madam Speaker, that as a father myself, it caused me to look at everything from a different perspective. He said, Aaron, I am in my early 50s and the father of 7 beautiful adults. He said what pains him the most is wondering if he failed his children. And this is serious. When he had opportunities to pack them up and go to another country and take advantage of the opportunities that were made available to him. He said he refused only because he felt if he held on just a little longer, something remarkable would happen in Grand Bahama. He told me that his wife was pregnant with the last child when Francis and Jane did what they did to Grand Bahama, but they worked their way through it. He said every time his daughters would ask, Daddy, why we stayed here? He would look at them and say, one day you will be proud of the island that you were born on. Madam Speaker, he said to us in here, put your differences aside, bury the political hatchet, and you and the rest of those folks in Parliament that told us so many things for so many years, just please, for once, deliver on what you promised. He said, allow them to have the pride in this island they once had, create opportunities for their families and friends to return home and be a part of something amazing. And Madam Speaker, I lay this at the feet of all of us who have been given the privilege and the honor to grace this House. If we are prepared to go all the way in and prove what we mean, that we mean what we say, let us do it all together. This has to be a bipartisan effort. Grand Bahama and the rest of the Bahamas need us. And Madam Speaker, as I see the member for Centerville's return, I also want to commend him on the wonderful job that he is doing. He mentioned myself and the member for Marco City and others who are so adamant about food security. I can say that Centerville has been very supportive. Whenever you call, as a lot of the other colleagues, they will answer. He's been very encouraging to me, and I want to say to you, Centerville, continue on the path that you're on. It's greatness for you and for the rest of us, and the Bahamas will be secured in our concerted effort, recognizing that as we fight together on these financial bills, it's about all of us. So once again, thank you for your efforts. No. Madam Speaker, I'm almost there. Now, to turn quickly, Madam Speaker, to the bills at hand, and I will be very brief. The Securities Industrial Bill 2024 and the DARE Act will be the only two that I touch on. I want to remind this House and the public that this is another industry that the last Free National Movement sought to introduce, as was indicated by the good member for East Grand Bahama. Madam Speaker, we introduced laws to govern the digital assets space because we saw the possibility and opportunities available and wanted Bahamians to be a part of it. We wanted us, the small man and woman, to be a part of it. We knew that it would attract an entirely new work stream of businesses to our country. But we also knew that this was something that needed to be heavily regulated, monitored, and enforced. And I'll say it again, heavily regulated, monitored, and enforced. And so, yes, these bills introduced continues to develop on the foundation that the FNM has put in place. And so we do indeed support it. Madam Speaker, once again, to this new day government, you're very welcome. The FNM had the vision. We did the base work, but the work must continue by all of us. Unfortunately, in the time since then, the Bahamas had to deal with major crises in the spaces, and we all are aware of those. Madam Speaker, not to be controversial, but I'm specifically referring to FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, who was convicted in the United States of stealing some $8 billion from customers of his FTX cryptocurrency exchange. But SBF was doing his operations in the Bahamas. His operation was in the Bahamas. Why was he not held responsible for his crimes here? He was able to do his dirty work here. Certain people were able to benefit, and then he was allowed to live. Now, the Bahamians are left holding the bag. And yes, our image was very tarnished. Bahamians suffered. Bahamians was hurt. This should be an indication, Madam Speaker, that once we expand this industry, we must also expand the protections for the Bahamian people and the consequences if our laws are not adhered to. I want to repeat this. This should be an indication that once we expand this industry, Madam Speaker, we must also expand the protection for the Bahamian people and the consequences if our laws are not adhered to. The DARE Bill 2024 encompasses a broader, greater range of digital assets activities relative of international standards. The new act provides a robust approach to protecting clients' interests. New standards are established to address conflicts of interest and or connected third-party relationships. With more powers for the Securities Commission and protection for Bahamians, we do see this as a step forward in the right direction. Madam Speaker, as I end, I will say Yes, Kalani, as I end, the official opposition is here to provide bipartisan support for this New Day government. And I say this New Day government, Madam Speaker, with all sincerity. But, Madam Speaker, based on some of the things that is happening right now in our little country, in our society, in my community, I would say for some of us, we can say it's a new day. Yes. But for the majority of us, we could use a distressing word. The new day has turned to Mayday. Oh. Mayday, a distress call. Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough for a lot of us. Yes. Your new day is our Mayday. Yes. We are calling out of distress. We need relief. Madam Speaker, we need relief, and I'm continuing to do good. And on that day, whenever it's called in 2026, who will be saying Mayday? The now government will be saying Mayday. As our people is now saying, no more new day. We are stressed, we are hurting. It is now May Day. May Day in June. But Madam Speaker, as a grateful member of Parliament and a grateful Bahamian and a grateful man to be alive today and to stand on the vertical and not lying on the horizontal, I want to end, Madam Speaker, as I started.
8 more minutes, go ahead.
Your grace and mercy brought me through. Lord, I'm living this moment because of you. I want to thank you and praise you too. Your grace and mercy brought me through. And then as I close, I want to testify, Madam Speaker, for all of us. Thank you, Lord, for saving a sinner like me to tell the world that salvation is free. What'd you say? What'd you say, preacher? Okay. There were times when I and you just didn't do right. But you watch over me all day and night because of your grace and mercy. Central Grand Bahama hereby rests as I caution this Mayday government.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
Grand Bahamians are listening. And the more that they speak and try to explain themselves, the quicker they go down in the quicksand. And so, sure enough, you know that they need to call Mayday. But, Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the people of West Grand Bahama and Bimini constituency who have reposed their trust in me to represent them in this honorable house. As I have said before, it is a trust I do not take for granted, but rather a serious responsibility. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate all of the recent graduates from the West Grand Bahama and Bimini constituency. I wish them well as they now embark on this new journey in their lives. And also a special recognition to 8 Mile Rock High School for winning the Junior Council Community Outreach Competition, an initiative out of 37 schools. On behalf of my family and the constituency of West Grand Bahama and Bimini, I would like to extend condolences to Ricardo, Tyrell, and the rest of the family on the passing of their mom, Claudette Kelly, who was better known by many as Miss Peggy and or Mama Pegs. She will be funeralized this Saturday, 29th of June at New Mount Olive Baptist Church, Holmes Rock, at 11 a.m. Condolences are also extended to the family of Sarah Russell, who died on Friday, 21st of June, at the age of 98. She was the oldest living resident in West End at the time of her demise. May God strengthen all of you in your time of bereavement. Madam Speaker, for a relatively brief moment, I want to speak to the several items before this Honorable House today: the Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Bill and the Securities Industry Bill 2024. This idea of digital assets, since it came into fame, without question, created a new market and brought about significant opportunities. As I understand, digital assets are supposed to be representations of value and include cryptocurrencies, security tokens, and utility tokens. With these, it is believed that the financial sector could offer better accessibility and convenience to consumers. When you take all of that into consideration, Madam Speaker, one must also look at consumer protections, industry protections, and oversight, and the availability of the information when needed. Will the systems in place be of quality? Will they be reliable? Will the transactions in that space be secure? Will the product or services be provided? Will the operators adhere to best industry practices and also within compliance of the law? Can we evoke sense of trust and confidence in this environment from a legislative perspective for all who are in it? These are the questions I believe are for primary consideration. So here we are today, Madam Speaker, with this Digital Assets and Registered Exchanges Bill 2024, hereinafter referred to as the DARE Bill, taking a proactive approach to addressing and improving the current regime by introducing a robust framework with greater focus on the protection of consumers and investors, as well as market development and innovation. The key word there for me is proactive, because really and truly, that is what it will take. Oftentimes, people tend to become incensed when regulation comes into the mix. My view has always been that it is necessary. We all can recall, Madam Speaker, and I am sure I am not the only one who will make this reference, but we all recall in recent history how the absence of stringent regimes can lead to. We know the story of one particular company that made the headlines. It was something new, so to speak, and it was fair to hold a reasonable expectation that there would be some flaws. From that whole saga came legitimate concerns, particularly where illicit activities like fraud are concerned. So it is necessary, Madam Speaker, for a country like ours to do what it can to mitigate of fraudulent and malicious activities to the extent that it can without limiting or disrupting commerce. I read somewhere that regulation has the potential to foster innovation in the industry by reducing barriers to entry and promoting competition. Regulation levels the playing field. It also can result in the development of much better products and services, which will be the advantage to the consumers and businesses or operators alike. I go back to that word that struck out to me earlier, proactive. Our approach must be proactive. There is no other way around it. This DARE bill resets the tone. It shows that as a sovereign state, we have learned from the mistakes of the past with respect to this sector. This bill covers almost all aspects in detail, spells it out. There is little room for ambiguity. It is a step in the right direction. I foresee, Madam Speaker, that sometime in the future, it will be revisited and amended again. That's the way these things are, constantly evolving, and so must be. Securities Industry Bill 2024. Madam Speaker, if the idea is better regulation, then hand in hand with that must be keen oversight. I note that with the Securities Industries Bill 2024, the objective is to strengthen the regulatory regime of the securities industry, bolstering the Commission's authority, consolidating the amendments to the former Act, compliance with the updated International Organization of Securities Commission objectives and principles of securities regulation, and the revised Financial Action Task Force 40 recommendations on international best practices, and enhance and encourages new capital market business. All of that to make sure that the relevant laws are current and competitive. Remember, I said earlier, without limiting or disrupting commerce. We are simply trying to make it better. Madam Speaker, I have likened the Securities Commission to that of the American Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Like them, our commission must become the most forceful regulator in this space. They must be able to forge ahead, launching lawsuits when necessary and taking enforcement actions against individuals or entities. Truth is, Madam Speaker, it should be the position of the Securities Commission that all laws and regulations apply to virtually any transaction, including digital assets. But, Madam Speaker, they must be able to first establish that the digital assets involved are investment contracts and therefore securities under our laws. Failing to do that, well, they would have no right to bring any action or enforcement. Generally, if I am not mistaken, for a given asset to constitute an investment contract, it must be accompanied by some sort of promise, obligation accompanying that asset. I am open to accept or appreciate that some may regard that as a misguided legal argument, so I will not get deep into that. What I want to say is that the Commission must have teeth in order to be able to carry out its duties, while at the same time not threatening a cavalcade of collateral consequences that will harm the people the Commission is trying to protect. And that included innovation on a broader scale. What we cannot allow is the fate of consumers in the hands of alleged wrongdoers. This Securities Industries Bill 2024, Madam Speaker, sets out the functions of the Commission and the administration of the relevant legislation. It manages systemic risks in the capital market. It preserves natural justice to be heard. Earlier, while speaking on the DARE bill, I mentioned how these sorts of things evolve. If we are talking about oversight, authority, that too must be able to change when necessary. This bill grants the Commission the authority to make and amend rules and guidelines. They are also empowered to update, develop, and/or amend operational forms without parliamentary process. It gives them teeth, Madam Speaker. It is a step in the right direction. I am happy, Madam Speaker, to see that we are doing all that we can to the extent that we came to strengthen and protect a sector and by extension our image as a financial jurisdiction. Madam Speaker, where the DARE bill and the Securities Industries Bill are all concerned, West Grand Bahama and Bimini support. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Asmini? Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, my understanding is that Kalani will go after the break. That's correct. That's so he can hit and run, as usual. Where exactly? in a non-criminal way. Madam Speaker, I therefore move that the House to suspend its business to 3 p.m. this afternoon.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Is there a seconder? Second. Thank you, Honorable Members. It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House be suspended until 3 p.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of this House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
I just thought about the other thing, hit and run me.